Shelley Winter Show, live, local, topical, and relevant. And in the studio, you just heard from Rick Jackson. He's in a runoff with Burt Jones. That's what they're calling it. They've already called it a runoff. And so in the studio with me is my younger brother, Josh Mckoon. I'm more handsome, but he is younger. And he's the chair of the Georgia GOP. Welcome, my brother. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted that primary day is here.
So am I. Let me ask you a question. Let's start with they just called it for Warren. Judge Warren has won, kept her seat on the Georgia Supreme Court. What's fascinating to me is that I've been talking about Democrats pulling more ballots than Republicans, but this was a one-on-one race. We could say Republican versus Democrat. So that means many Democrats voted for the incumbent. Is that what you're thinking too?
That's exactly what happened. This is a victory, obviously, for Justice Warren, who was appointed by a Republican governor, but it's really a victory for an independent judiciary. What Jen Jordan was trying to do in this race was to say, you can count on me. I'm going to go ahead and tell you how I'm going to decide cases that come before the court. And if you're a Republican, you're not going to get a fair hearing. So I'm really, really pleased for Justice Warren. She deserved to be returned to the bench, and good for Georgia for sending her back.
And I think Charlie Bethel is also ahead in his race as well. He's at 53.1%. So now let me ask you this question because I don't know. Is it 50+1 in these races also?
That's correct.
It's through every
correct.
race. Okay, so right now he's in the lead, and it's about 43% of the votes counted. You heard from Rick Jackson talking about being in a runoff, entrenched politicians, all that kind of stuff. I know as Georgia chair, you're not going to get into that. But I do want to ask you about Keisha Lance Bottoms. With 7 people in that race, including her, she may go without a runoff. I think that's impressive, and that's kind of a dominance that we should be worried about. Am I a Republican, or should I just be laughing?
Look, you got to remember, Shelley, primary electorate is very different from the general election electorate. Keisha Bottoms, we've talked about this, the only Atlanta mayor in modern history not to run for a second term, somebody that basically got rescued by the Biden administration from what, in my view, were colossal failures. I was spending a lot of time in Atlanta in 2020. We remember the colossal failures, the failure to back Atlanta police officers, what the summer of 2020 was like in Atlanta. There are a lot of Democrats, there are a lot of black Democrats in Atlanta that are not big fans of Keisha Bottoms. And so if I had to pick someone to run against, she, to me, is the most vulnerable Democrat. There is a lot for us to talk about in terms of her record as mayor,
right? And
say, do you really want this to be what Georgia looks like?
So that being said, why do you think that is it because of the primary vote is so heavily African-American and female? So that being said, did they all make a mistake? Because she's going to win. Like I said, I've never seen anything like this. With 7 people in a race, she's probably going to win without a runoff.
The Democratic Party nationally in Georgia has not been terribly good at picking the best candidates. Look at the presidential election we got finished with in 2024. Kamala Harris was not a good candidate for president. I don't know what Mayor Bottoms is going to say when she's challenged on her record. Maybe she's got explanations for what happened. And in my view, what we're still dealing with in the city of Atlanta because of her failure of leadership. But that, again, public safety, these are basic, this is about, to me, the last several elections have been about who owns common sense, who do voters feel like is the common sense candidate. And I believe the Republican nominee for governor is going to be somebody that can say, look at 20 years of Republican governance of this state. We've kept taxes low. We've kept people safe. We've had a great environment to live, work, and raise a family. And what is Mayor Bottoms going to say? I'm going to do for Georgia what I did for Atlanta during my 4 years as mayor. I think that's a contrast I'm willing to, have. I think that puts us in a good position.
So that being said, Ossoff is at the top of the ticket. Do you think I think he may be unbeatable. That's my just general assessment based on what I've heard, what I've seen. Your thoughts?
I don't think John Ossoff is unbeatable. I think John Ossoff is one of the most unqualified people ever elected to the United
Tell
States
us what
Senate.
you really think, brother
Look,
Josh.
I used to say that I thought it was a horse race between John Fetterman and John Ossoff in terms of who was the most unqualified. If I see Senator Fetterman, I'm going to apologize to him because this is a guy who had no record. You know, I may have profound policy disagreements with Senator Warnock. Senator Warnock was born into poverty, grew up in public housing in Savannah, Georgia, and made something of himself. That is an American story, right?
Right.
Senator Ossoff had some rich parents, you know, and the thing that's different now that wasn't true 5.5 years ago is we've got a voting record to look at. He pretended to be a middle of the road, Sam Nunn kind of Democrat. What we've found in the last 5.5 years is he votes with California. He's basically California's third United States senator. And whoever emerges from our race is going to be able to prosecute that case. It's hard to beat an incumbent. I acknowledge that.
Right,
We're in
right.
a competitive environment. But is he unbeatable? Absolutely not.
Let me ask you this: going to our side on the Senate race, I know, as the chair of the party, you're not going to pick anybody, but it looks like it's going to be Dooley there. He and Carter are about 2 points separate. They're separated by about 2 points. Your thoughts in that runoff? No matter who it is, it's going to be Collins and one of those two guys. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so, we're going to have a competitive 4 weeks ahead. I think whoever comes out of that, they're going to be tested. They're going to have fought through this battle over the last year. And I think they're going to be prepared to immediately prosecute the case against John Ossoff. Whether that's Mike Collins, whether that's Buddy Carter, whether that's Derek Dooley, they all bring a lot to the table. They're all men of accomplishment. They're all people who can own that common sense space. This is a guy who voted against the Laken Riley Act. Laken Riley was his constituent, and he said, I'm so attached to the identity politics, the far left woke wing of the Democratic Party, I can't bring myself to vote for the Laken Riley Act. There's a lot of meat on that bone for whoever our eventual nominee is.
Are you surprised at Dooley's performance at all?
I'm not, because look, Governor Brian Kemp,
best governor we've ever had,
is an unbelievably popular governor, and he put his name on Derek Dooley from day one. They have barnstormed the state for the last several weeks. If you follow the spend, you saw in the last couple of weeks, Derek Dooley begin to spend a lot of money in the Atlanta media market. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, we may not know until tomorrow who the winner of this thing is, because I'm being told that Fulton County won't start posting results until this precinct in Sandy Springs closes at 11 o'clock
right,
tonight.
We just reported that, yeah. But that was due to police action, in all fairness.
The poll being open, I'm fine with that.
Right.
It is an incorrect reading of the law to say that they can't report the results in polls that have closed.
So explain that to me, because I'm thinking to myself, it's one precinct. And whatever, we've had low turnout, right? We know we have low turnout in this primary election, right? Because it's a primary during a midterm. And there's no big, deception of these governor's races, but you understand what I'm saying. It's a low turnout.
Right.
One precinct in one county, I don't understand, and it's the largest county. I don't understand why you hold up every vote in the county for one precinct. What does the law say? You said it's a misreading of the law.
The law is very clear that if the poll hours for that precinct are extended, you're not going to report out the early vote numbers for that precinct.
Right.
But there's absolutely no legal barrier to them beginning to count and report out the votes in every closed precinct. And if you think about it, that makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense.
The whole reason the law says don't report out until after 7 p.m. is so you don't impact voting behavior. Right. So this is one more example of Fulton County just making up the rules as they go along. And that is what is so frustrating. I know we have this whole conversation about, people are obsessed with the election law and the election rules. All we want is for a normal elections process.
Right.
We want to get the results on election night We want to know what the result is so that we can move on the next day. And this is just not acceptable.
And I agree with you. I'm not, and again, I don't think you are doing this, and I'm not doing this, certainly. We're not casting aspersions on cheating or anything like that.
Correct.
We're just saying if you're going to be in charge of running something, run it correctly.
That's right.
It makes no sense to keep all the tally, early voting included, for Fulton County because one precinct in Sandy Springs.
Exactly.
Can you hang out for a while?
I'd love to.
Yeah. I talked to wifey. She said it's okay. You can hang out for a while.
Well, if she says it's okay, then I'll be here.
448-720-750, 1-800-WSB Talk. It's Shelley Wynn Show. We're going to midnight. We're in the studio with Georgia GOP Chair Josh Mckoon. We will be right back.